Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Mostly gentlemen, unfortunately, rather than ladies. Not sure how many female listeners we have out here, but I'm Peck,
I'm Chris.
and tonight we're going to be talking about racism in wrestling, and more so in terms of booking and creating characters. And this segment's going to be titled "Off to the Racism."
Absolutely. Giddy up.
Now, the real question here is how much of this is just due to complete abject laziness on the part of promoters and people to come up with the gimmicks, and how much of it is really, really just ignorance by the writers, do you think?
I don't know. That's a good question. I think, it depends what kind of era you were in, to judge the racism. And then it depends, like, who were the bookers?
I mean, there's always been ethnic characters over time, and a lot
Yeah.
of them have been used to generate heat. We had, communists during the Cold War. We had Baron von Raschke after World War II. We had people like that.
Hmm.
But it seems to me that way, way too often, a lot of times, they'll just look at a wrestler, look at their heritage, and just say, great, your entire gimmick is going to be based solely around your heritage. We're not going to let you do anything else. It's just going to be this.
Because it's interesting because, like,
Your name,
yeah.
your attire, your, whatever language they have you choose to speak. It's like, it just seems like, okay, you're just ethnically this. We're just going to pigeonhole you right into this gimmick, and you're not going to be allowed to do anything else.
Like, if you look at, here's a wrestler from the 80s. Well, he's more of a manager, but slick. The guy debuts drinking punch and eating uh, fried
Chicken,
chicken,
collard
yeah.
greens, and all that.
Yeah, so he's playing up on the black ethnic stereotype and just making him like a pimp. It's like, geez. I mean, it's just that's like the epitome of, like, racism and
And the Godfather.
stereotyping.
Don't forget the Godfather. We had that going
Godfather,
on too.
Godfather as well, big pimp. See, look at those two characters, both from WWE, and you can see where, like, the sense of just kind of like playing off the race uh, affects somebody. I mean, but I guess no one forced them. They all agreed to it. So what can you say about that?
And they do it over and over and over again. I
They
mean,
do.
when was the last time they billed Chavo Guerrero as anything but a Mexican warrior, And
Yeah.
then they always stick him with a tag team partner of Latin American descent, like Hernandez, who just can't catch a break in his singles career to save his life.
Yeah. So I mean, that's racism
And then, okay,
to a degree.
it's like you're Canadian, you're automatically thrown in with like Team Canada or
Yep.
the Hart Foundation or any of that. It's like, can you be your own person? The only exception is like Edge and Christian, obviously. They wanted to actually have gimmicks built up around them and to be themselves.
Well, that's kind of like the way the WWF was back in, well, WWF was in, like, the 60s and 70s. They based characters off of ethnic stereotypes.
And don't forget cultural stereotypes
Hmm.
too, because look at the Briscoes in RWH or RWH ROH. They're rednecks from Delaware,
Hmm.
and that's all they are. It's like,
Huh?
are you trying to book anything? I mean, I honestly didn't know they were connected to the other Briscoes just because of how far away they looked from them.
What's interesting too, but, like, this really isn't racism; it's just sloppy booking. If you always look at WWE, whoever they bring in as, like, a Japanese wrestler, they're always, like, either not Japanese or they're like a really crummy version of a Japanese wrestler. They're not like the primetime guys.
You know what though? I always thought Yoshitatsu had potential, and I liked what they were doing with his new gimmick. They gave him like this half face paint, kind of like Muda and Sting, and
Yeah,
it looked really good. And then they never used him.
yeah. So you
He had
wonder.
potential. I watched a couple of his matches. I'm like, okay, you can have a solid, entertaining match. But the most recent example, Tensai. What the hell?
Yeah, he's not even
Why is
Japanese.
Albert? I mean, I understand he had a very long professional career over in Japan, but that doesn't make you Japanese.
I know. Well, here's a racism type of thing. Look at Ahmed Jones. Now, he was a black Intercontinental Champion, but then never really given that push to the world. And I don't even know really if that has to do with racism. It might just be like the writing and the, people backstabbing and stuff. But there's a guy that had everything and should have been a world champion, but he wasn't.
Well, I mean, it just goes so much further than that. I mean, look at the type of music that gets selected for these people.
Yeah,
Like, okay, a black guy's what? He's not allowed to have a rock song for his entrance music.
yeah,
It's always some sort of hip hop beat. You can't let him branch out at all.
yeah. They don't do that.
No, they really don't. And then you look at some of the things, some of the things that they've gotten in WWE especially has gotten in trouble for over the months. You remember that joke that you remember when Tensai had a manager, Sakamoto or whatever? Well, one of the
I
commentators
don't know.
joked that every time he screwed up, Tensai changed his manager's name to Something Wong.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that wasn't very
Was
nice.
that Abraham Washington guy?
No, yes, as a matter of fact, it
Because
was.
I remember
That's who said it,
I remember reading about that.
and
That was a
that's
big
why he's no
big thing.
longer affiliated with the Primetime Players. That was him. I'm glad you pointed that out. Yes,
Okay.
that was him.
Was he their manager?
Yeah, yeah, he was the
Okay.
manager of the Primetime Players, and yeah,
I don't think I think they fired him.
they did because
Yeah.
of that.
So you gotta be careful. Because I mean, like I was watching a show, and it shows you the sign of the times. They look at that. Okay, they made that comment, and there was another comment that was made about I think gays and lesbians or something on Raw once. But then I was watching a MSG show from 1984. It might have been 85, and it was Dick Murdoch versus one of the Samoans. As soon as like I think Alpha beat him, he ran up to the mic and said, "Get back in here, you jungle bunny." And like that was just like that was acceptable back then, and it probably is somewhere today. I mean, I'm sure people
In
it
certain
shows,
circles,
yeah,
but I mean, with how political correctness is and how much more aware we are of things like that, no, it's not cool. It doesn't
no.
fly. But
Do you think? Here's a question: do you think it just really depends on the booking and the promoter? Because if you look at it, a lot of these promotions have never had a black world champion. Now WWE, I don't think they ever have.
oh
You,
yeah, well, I mean, The Rock doesn't really count because he's
yeah,
half and half. But Booker T, he was their world champion.
was he the WWE one though? I don't know if
It
he
doesn't matter. He
was.
was world heavyweight champion.
I
Who cares?
guess.
I'm not one of those people that makes that distinction. I hate that. I don't
Well,
care if you're WWE champ or world heavyweight champ.
well, to me, like you have to be the fully in WWE World Heavyweight Champion or whatever. Like to me,
Mark Henry was world heavyweight champion. He wasn't WWE champion. Who
see,
cares?
you wonder though. You wonder if they never want to put that belt on there.
No, I
You
think that
wonder.
just has more to do with being stuck on SmackDown.
It could, but because like okay, here's an example. Like WCW made Ron Simmons the World Heavyweight Champion. They made Booker T the World Heavyweight Champion. They made I don't know if there was anybody else that was African American World Heavyweight Champion.
Not to my knowledge, no.
I'm gonna have to do some research on that. I don't believe so, but I mean, and the NWA TNA made Ron Killings World Heavyweight Champion.
Which R-Truth never got a shot. He had one title shot for it, never won it in
Yeah.
WWE.
So it just seems like it just depends on the promotion. You know.
Yeah, that's true. But I mean, I don't know. I just like I look at how a lot of them are just booked and how the characters are created, and I'm just like, this is so stereotypical. Crime Time.
Yeah, it's
Whether
very.
you're all right with it or not, whether they went along with it, and it was funny, they were entertaining, but at the same time, it was just like, what kind of stereotype are you trying to perpetuate here?
Yeah, you kind of wonder. Um, WWF, like with a lot of their Japanese wrestlers, they always kind of do like the karate gimmick type of thing. But I mean, it usually works. I mean, most of their Japanese guys they use, like I said, aren't Japanese, or they're just kind of like enhancement talent. They're not really using a crucial gimmick. I mean, WCW used to have like the Great Muta, all the primetime guys from New Japan.
Masahiro Chono.
Yeah, and WWE would bring in like Omari from All Japan that no one really knew. So like, there's a difference right there. But
Well, I mean, I think there is an issue too because promos are so important. There is a language barrier
yeah,
sometimes, and they try to shy away from that. But
that is true.
they've had missteps all over the place though. Because you remember when Kurt Angle was with Davari for a period of time,
Yeah, it's kind of
and
weird.
they had an interview segment where he went, "I got to be honest, I really don't like the blacks" or something to that effect, and I was just like, "What are you doing?
Oh man,
Who thought that was a good idea?"
that's like suicide there.
Yeah, but apparently it never, really got that much tread because here he is, years later, and no one brings it up.
Well, then the thing too is you look at it face value. It's a fake show. It's pretend. It's almost like watching a movie. So you kind of wonder. You got to take it at face value too. It's just like, well, if they do say these things sometimes, racist or not, it's their own little world. It's like their own little show.
True, but it just seems like sheer laziness. They just look at
It
someone and
could be
just
too.
decide this is what you're going to be.
Yeah. I
Like
mean,
Papa Shango, okay, we're
yeah.
going to make you a voodoo priest because apparently they're all African American.
Same thing with Tony Atlas's Saba Simba. I mean, Jesus. Talk about like just insulting a person up and down.
That was a bad one.
Because it wasn't like he was from Africa. I mean, originally, all African Americans are from Africa, but it wasn't like his directly from Africa, like where he's just like that's a part of his heritage. That's where he grew up. That's all. No, he's just a guy from
I did
the
get a
South.
really huge laugh out of them pointing out Kofi Kingston wasn't in fact Jamaican, and then
Yeah,
he had to drop that gimmick soon afterward. I like that.
yeah. See, there's another thing like that. Like why play off that? Like SD Jones was from the West End, and Antigua or whatever, and
Antigua.
Antigua. Yeah, sorry. So West Indies. So he was like from that culture. So he'd wear the Hawaiian shirts and be he was all in that. So that made sense. But yeah, like why would you put Kofi Kingston in this? And don't be something that you're not. I mean, wrestling you kind of are, but if it's just not a part of you, it doesn't work as a gimmick. It just doesn't flow. So I mean, but then another funny ethnic stereotype was like Mr. Fuji. But look how great that got over. Like he was just
He was a great manager, though. I
yeah.
mean, he did everything right, outside the ring, and he kept people entertained, like him or not.
And he was a world tag team champion, so I mean, at least
Yeah.
he got that. So, you know, that's pretty cool there.
And matter of fact, one of the biggest people that I've seen doing this in recent years, and someone that I think is just so completely out of touch with wrestling in this decade, last decade, or even 2 decades, or even 3 decades ago, is Jim Cornette.
Yeah,
My God, when he was running TNA, booking was just god awful. I couldn't stand it. And now he's running ROH, and we're just back to the same Southern fried wrestling crap. And every now and then you get one good storyline out of 10 or one good angle,
yeah,
but everyone he has just automatically, whatever their heritage is, bam, here you are. This is
yeah.
what you are.
See, that's like that mentality. And I think that works to a degree, but you can't do it with everybody. You can't make
No, I
just
mean
because the guy's Irish.
they made such a big deal out of Kevin Steen being a Canadian.
Yeah,
They built up an entire pay-per-view and then called it border war around it.
yeah.
Like,
See,
come on.
and it's like you can't make just because someone's Irish, and German. Everybody's a little bit of something. So I don't know. That's just stale booking.
It really is.
Another guy too that was, African American that did pretty well and should have been a world champion. I think was the Junkyard Dog.
Yeah,
He was
yeah, absolutely.
really
But I
over.
mean, the problem with that was they really didn't want to have too many champions back then because Hogan was so dominant,
I
and they
know.
really never wanted to dethrone him until the Ultimate Warrior, and then he politicked and bitched till he got the belt back.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think that he always says that it just wasn't working. They wouldn't put the belt back on him.
Well,
I
you
don't know. I
remember
doubt
they
that.
pulled back on Jake Roberts after a segment where he got too over,
Yeah,
and it's like
someone's putting the berry to it.
why is change bad?
Yeah, sometimes change is a good thing. The cool thing though about Junkyard Dog, I think he had a little bit better. I mean, he had a great run in WWE, but he had better like chance at like the world title in WCW because he did wrestle Ric Flair for the belt. That's pretty cool. That's
Right?
saying
Yeah,
that hey,
absolutely. I mean, if you're in the ring with Ric Flair, win, lose, or draw, you got somewhere.
yeah. And I think he was a six-man world champion over there. I'm not sure, but he was a guy that definitely deserved the belt. So was Tony Atlas and Rocky Johnson. Now they won the tag team titles in WWE, but that just didn't work because those guys didn't get along too
No,
much.
no,
So
they didn't like each other at all.
that's tough when you don't like your world tag team partner. But you wonder, like, how much racism has to do with things. I remember, like, the big thing in WCW was, like, a lot of the luchadors, Hardy Buddy Harrison, Sonny Ono, a lot of them tried suing WCW for racism. They weren't getting pushes because they were, of their ethnic heritage and of their race.
Here's another place where you look at it. When is the last time we've seen a African American woman wrestler? I mean, Alicia Fox is the only one I can think of in WWE, and Layla, she's half and half.
Wasn't that Kong lady there, whatever?
Yeah, but she doesn't wrestle.
Okay, yeah, so. Yeah, that's about it. I mean, a lot of them.
TNA doesn't, I don't believe, have any under contract right now. I've never seen, not since Sojourner Bolt lost whatever match that was, I haven't seen her.
Jackie was there for a little bit, but she left.
Thank God, she was getting old.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do with her. And it's not really like a race issue, it's just a matter of age and just your gimmicks kind of run stale.
Yeah, pretty much. Because really, the women wrestlers even have gimmicks, let's be honest.
It's hard to get into them. Like, I mean, they're very nice to look at, and a lot of them are good wrestlers, but it's one of those things that's just, I don't know, it's
It doesn't
hard.
hold our interest.
And you think it would, though, because you'd be interested in looking at females,
Well,
but
I
it just...
am, but I'm not interested in the in-ring action. That's
Yeah,
the problem.
that's the
I mean,
problem.
they don't do anything that ever really wowed me, except for the one match at Lockdown, believe it or not, a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it
The
was
one
like...
title match, we were actually into it.
But I remember the one year they were promoting, like, Mickey James like crazy, then she has her lockdown match, and it's like 2 minutes. I mean, how do you get behind, as a fan, trying to, oh, this is great, they have the build up, then you see the actual match. It's not good. So that's tough to get hard behind. I'm trying to think of some other, you know, ethnically charged, events or racist type of situations. I mean, I remember the one wrestler in NBA was called Pork Chop Cash. I don't know if that was under by his doing or if it was, kind of like a joke on him. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you think of all the people that it looked like. Think of all the literate rednecks that have been booked. I
Yeah,
mean, we had Trevor Murdoch, we had Lance Cade, rest in peace. We had so
Hillbilly
many of
Jim.
those people like that. Like,
You wonder,
yeah,
and you wonder if like some people are just, if it's just the Booker pulling a rib on them. Well, but here's interesting too. You look at Dusty Rhodes. He's a white guy, but if you close your eyes, he sounds like an African American. And his whole gimmick, the son of a plumber, and that whole southern and hardworking, working class kind of guy, reminds you of a black guy.
yeah, yeah. In some cases, yeah, it does.
In some cases, yeah. I mean, so it's like he's almost like the white African American wrestler here.
Although eyes open or closed, I'm still usually trying to wonder what the hell is Dusty Rhodes saying.
Yeah, one of the hardest people to understand, probably in professional wrestling. Trying to think of some other racist type situations that people called by race or were angered about. I can't really think of any off the top of my head. Um,
There was one incident, and I think I was one of the only people that picked up on it because it was Sheamus versus Finlay, and one was from Northern Ireland and one was from Southern Ireland. I'm like, oh, they're gonna do a whole IRA angle out of this, and it never happened, and I was really disappointed.
yeah, there you go. See, they could have made some money off of that. God. Well, then I wonder too I wonder if a lot of the Samoan wrestlers are kind of
Oh, they all get grouped in. Yeah,
yeah.
same with that.
They're always from the
Except
island.
for Roman Reigns, he just screams like Godzilla and powerbombs somebody. I like
Jeez.
him. I like his gimmick. He's the only one of the Shield worth a damn. But that's just because I like anybody that can do a powerbomb.
They all seem like they're related too in some way. They're all
Here's the other
related.
question: what about religious discrimination? Like, what about the people that get grouped in like that?
Yeah, I mean
Because
that's
you remember
true.
when Molly Holly got made fun of for being a virgin,
Yeah,
and then you had you know, we had CM Punk being straight edge. You look at all the people that made fun of him, and they
yeah,
would base his storylines with people that drank and people that did drugs, like his angle with Raven and ROH stuff like that.
yeah. Those things kind of come into consideration too. People have drug problems and drinking problems, like Jake the Snake.
And the angle they did with the Hawk and all that, they really didn't treat them well at all.
No, and Animal said Hawk wanted to do it. I mean, I'm sure that he was willing, but I don't know if it was like, hey, let's do this.
But here's the question: what was he willing to do it for? How much were they paying him? What was he going to use that money for?
Yeah,
That's the other problem.
That's the question. And it's
And I very seldom take Jake Roberts' side in anything because he's such a lying bastard, and you really can't trust him. But I got to admit, I'm on his side. Jerry Lawler did not have to pour real whiskey into his face.
see,
I mean, he's an alcoholic. You can't do that to somebody.
yeah, that's really tough when they're trying to overcome that. Trying to think of some other funny, not funny, but just like
Well, do you remember Eric Bischoff when they exploited lesbians with the HLA, hot lesbian action?
I remember that. And the girl that actually like when they first introduced that, she was that Penny Lane from that UPW thing, and she's like, I will never do anything sexual or whatever on TV. Meanwhile, she's on Raw, like, doing that. It's pretty disturbing.
I mean,
Sell out.
I didn't object for obvious reasons, but
So you sell out. Trying to think about. Well, I mean, you could say the Harlem Heat to an extent were like a racially charged type of group. I mean, Booker T said the N word on WCW one time. He was
when
like,
he was calling out Hogan, I
"Yeah,
remember.
he said, I'm going to get you," and then he says that.
Well, they also had Vince McMahon say it to John Cena, and then they cut to Booker T. This is on a pay-per-view. He goes, "He didn't just say that. Tell me he didn't just say that."
Wow.
I was just like, I can't believe they let that go. That's terrible.
Yeah, but I guess there's like that loophole where it's like pay-per-view. You get what you pay for, I guess. But
Yeah.
you could say now this, even though it wasn't really like, I guess, I don't know if he was world champion or not, but Bobby Lashley, that was a big push.
He was ECW champion.
Okay, so he was never the world champion, I don't think?
Thank God, he was one of the most boring big men I've ever seen.
He was.
It's like you're athletic, but I hate you.
I loved it when
I
he-
don't know why I hate you. I just hate you.
I loved it when he came because he was like an African-American version of Goldberg, and he's just murdering everybody. But then
That's
when he
why I
talked...
hated him because he couldn't have a good match.
Well, then he talked like the girl from like Police Academy. Hello? I'm gonna wrestle tonight. It's like what? Like
I know he's one of
how?
those people. It's like if you weren't bigger than me, I would make fun of your voice so bad, but you could rip me in half with one arm.
Do you say Native Americans might be kind of discriminated against? They've never really been.
Well, look at the representation. I mean, although I believe Tatanka was actually Native
Yeah,
American, so that was cool.
Chief
But
J was an Italian just trying to be
yeah,
a
Chief J Strongbow, I don't believe was Native American at
no.
all.
While McDaniel wasn't. I'm not sure. I don't know if he was world champion or not.
What about the other older Native American wrestler? You know, like back in Bruno's days.
No, Chief J is all I can
Was
really.
that Chief J,
Yeah,
or was
Chief
that
J.
my grandma used to tell me about another one, a real famous one. I don't believe it was Chief J Strongbow.
There's Wahoo McDaniel. There's
It wasn't Wahoo McDaniel.
Billy Two Eagles.
Maybe it was him.
I
I
don't
don't
know.
remember. I don't believe it was the one
Billy
that
Two Eagles. I don't know if that was. See, that was like one of those recycled names. I'm not sure.
What
If,
about is Bo Dallas Native American? The new wrestler that they have?
I
He
don't
looks
know.
like it, but I don't know.
It's a good question. Let's take a look. Let's see if he's Native American or not.
He might be Latino. I really don't know. Or he could just be deeply tanned Italian.
That's Mike Rotunda's son. So
What the hell does that mean? Is he Italian though?
IRS's son. So yeah, I don't really think he's Native American.
He has that look though.
Could be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess not.
How old is he? Let's see.
His grandfather's Blackjack Mulligan. Scroll down.
Yeah, they're all related.
Oh my.
He's only 22. Wow. He looks like so much older. He really does. He looks like 33.
He hasn't aged well.
Like I'm 27, but I think I look like younger than him.
I'm 23 and I look younger than him.
Jeez. I'm trying to see who were we talking about before? Okay, like Billy Two Eagles. I'm not sure if he's like if he's that guy that wrestled as like a jobber or if he's a guy from the 70s. Yeah. Billy Two Eagles and Joe Lightfoot. Okay, so he was in the NWA. Okay. I was right then. But that might be a little bit before you were talking about earlier, so like the 60s and stuff.
Yeah, maybe it was Chief J Strong, but
There-
I don't honestly remember.
They brought in like supposedly his brother, but he wasn't. But he was actually, I think, Native American was Jules Strongbow. But
I believe there was somebody named John, but I can't for the life of me remember who. It doesn't matter. It's
Okay.
immaterial at this point. But
I mean, Tatanka was, a decent. Was he Intercontinental champion? I think he was, wasn't he?
I don't believe he
I-
ever won a belt. Maybe, I don't know.
I thought he might have been. I think he was tag champ with Bam Bam Bigelow.
Was he?
Yeah, that was like in
I
'95.
know they were in a tag team together because they faced they
It was like
faced
the 1-2-3 kid and Bob Sparkle at Hallway a lot.
yeah, and then they split up and he teamed with Sid and he faced Diesel and Bigelow.
Let me see if he ever won the tag belts. I thought he did. Chris Chase.
Yeah, took the ring name to Tonka. Chris Travis doesn't sound particularly. No, he won the match by a count out for the Intercontinental title.
Okay. Thought he won the tag belts. Could be wrong.
No.
I don't see him. Maybe not.
No, guess not.
He might have like wrestled for them, but I guess not. I know he might have. I don't know. It doesn't really say, but who knows? But let's see how old he is now. He's probably in his almost 50. Yeah, 51. So he's up there.
Yeah.
So I mean, you can look at racism as a whole too. I mean, like, look at Yokozuna though. I mean, he was Samoan
And
he won.
they cast
Yeah,
him as Japanese.
yeah. So figure that out, and then he wins the world title.
Well,
So I
that's
mean,
close enough. But
yeah. So I mean, it all kind of comes around full circle. But I mean, sometimes stereotypes work, sometimes they don't. Sometimes racism is prevalent, sometimes it isn't. It just depends where you're at and
how
you
you
know,
view things.
yeah.
Which prism. I mean, granted, it's entertainment. You have to take everything with a grain of salt and not take it too seriously.
I mean, to me, like just looking back at it, WCW was more generous with its.
International wrestlers and more dignified in
Yeah.
how they presented them.
They definitely were, and if it didn't really matter what. I mean, it might have mattered what color, but they made it seem like it didn't. And a lot of different cultures and different ethnicities were champions. So that was
Well,
always.
I mean, they really emphasize the world championship
Yeah.
wrestling. You know, I mean, WWE, it's more like we go on tour every now and then, but we really only care about business in here in Canada.
Yeah, because WCW at the time, like they had that work relationship with New Japan, so a lot of like the Japanese wrestlers were the NWA champion.
Yeah.
And and a lot of different, the Mexican lucha libre guys they had, were the cruiserweight champions or the TV champions. Prince Iaukea, who was Curtis Iaukea, his I think it was his grandson or his nephew,
Well, let's
was a
not
TV
forget,
champion.
though, before we finish here, the biggest blunder in recent memory: the suicide bomber funeral for Muhammad Hassan's partner.
Oh
Do you
yeah,
remember that?
that was pretty horrible.
During his brief feud with The Undertaker, they all came out like a bunch of masked men and attacked The Undertaker. Well, he laid out one of them quite severely, so the rest of them picked him up and carried him out of the ring the same way that we've seen some of those funerals be articulated in the media. That didn't go over well, and that's what actually led to Muhammad Hassan's dismissal, as well as the desire to pursue acting
Yeah, when you have those controversial characters,
and
there's
a power
always a
bomb through the
price.
stage.
Yeah. So it's just it's another thing too. When we were talking about one of our other podcasts about that Zeb Colder guy, it's just a sign of the times. It just depends. Like, look at the Iron Sheik. They had the Iron Sheik when the Ayatollah was going on, and he was a world champion.
I mean, yeah, there also is something to be said that no publicity is bad publicity sometimes too.
Yeah, it just depends how you look at things. But I would say racism, I think to a degree, is in wrestling. There's no doubt. I just don't know how much. I would say more prevalent in WWE than it is in WCW that I know of. You know, but hey, what can you do? I don't think it's as prevalent in TNA. It seems like everybody kind of gets a decent shot, or they get equally screwed in TNA.
If
It just
anything, age
depends.
discrimination against younger people happens in TNA.
And then you know what too? They tried to do that storyline too, with like the new blood in TNA, and it just didn't work. The young against the old, or the originals against the new, whatever. It was
Yeah, that was just a waste.
garbage. But it's just racism's always going to be around. I don't think you can ever get rid of it, but it's
No,
just
but it's just interesting to see how they incorporate it into the storylines and how fine of a line they decide to tread.
yeah. I mean, look at the Nation of Domination too.
Yeah.
But which is interesting. The South African Truth Commission would help them a couple times.
Yep.
Which weren't they against African Americans? You can figure that all out. That was a big time too back then. They had the bikers, the Latinos,
Puerto
the
Ricans.
Puerto Ricans, the African Americans, the Canadians. We're all
Well,
fighting each
they
other.
were all for factions back then.
Oh my God.
Everyone was involved in one.
The Kyantai group. I mean, it was just ridiculous.
It was just pure booking laziness at its finest, and they only cared about the top stars.
It was. Yeah, that's so true. That is really true.
Well, that's about it I got to say on this topic. How about you?
Yeah, I think we can always revisit it again if there's something more prevalent. But
There's always more Zeb Colder to be had.
oh my goodness, it doesn't get old.
No. Well, I'm Peck.
I'm Chris.
Good night.